All right. The question comes in, and there's several things to. It's one of those. Man, I wish we had more time before our guest is coming on. But it comes in, and it's actually clarification, and it goes back to um, some things that we've had. So let's deal with this in the sense of a prerequisite question. All right, let's deal with this. Is being tempted to sin a sin?
No, because of Matthew 4 and Luke 4, where Jesus was tempted. So if it just being tempted is a sin, that means that Jesus would have sinned, and Jesus did not sin. So therefore, if I'm answering correctly, to be tempted is not sin.
Right.
All right.
And he was tempted in all points as we are, yet without sin.
Yet without sin.
Hebrews 4:15.
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, I think that's very, basic understanding of it. But, sometimes that's what we need is just a nice, simple answer to things. Because, I mean, if we're told that Jesus does not have sin, but we know he was tempted in every point like as we are, then the temptation in and of itself is not sin. James 1:15, then when lust hath conceived, is the passage. It says, it bringeth forth sin. And so when you allow that temptation to bring forth the action, that's where sin is. Now, the reason I asked that question is we had a question come in some months ago, and we produced a whole 28.5-minute program on our Have a Bible question, 2-part series, I think it was, dealing with this.
Yeah.
Because the question that came in was an individual that has repented of the sin of homosexuality, but they were still being tempted. So are they in sin being tempted? And the answer was no, the temptation alone is not the sin. It's when you give into it. And there could be a lot of things, and this study tonight is not, and then Jack is exactly right, yielding to temptation is sin. I don't want to travel down the road of homosexuality, examining that so much right now. It's just setting the context for what we were answering. And so somebody watched that episode, then they wrote in, and I think it was a very good question, because what they wanted to know is, all right, they understand the idea of not giving in, and if just the desire is not a sin, then what about pornography? And I can kind of see where they're coming from on that, but I don't grant the premise that just lusting after a woman is okay, or homosexual. You can't give yourself into that. Now I'm going to use Romans chapter 1 in answering this.
Okay.
Because it's in Romans chapter 1 that it talks about the idea of unrighteousness. And what we're dealing with is the heart of an individual. And he lists all these sins of unrighteousness, which includes homosexuality, by the way. The idea of, let's start in verse 29, because it's in Romans 1:29. It says, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whispers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful. Now look at verse 32 here. Who, knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit, now that's the idea of giving in to those lusts, they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but look at this last part, but have pleasure in them that do them. There's a difference between a natural desire of a man being attracted to a woman. I mean, God makes us, and I just opened up a debate, I know, but God makes man desire women and women desire man. That's part of the way he designed us from the very beginning. That's not wrong. But that desire, when we decide to look upon somebody with lust in our heart, and we are thinking about fornication, and that's what pornography is illicit sexual activity, because anything outside the marriage bed is illicit sexual activity.
That's one of the verses I was thinking of right there.
Which one? Do you have that for me? Because I can't remember it. But, anything outside the marriage bed is illicit sexual activity, and that's pornea.
Hebrews 13:4
Okay.
says, marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. And you just went to that word, fornication there.
Yeah, and that's pornea. And so, for a man to be looking at a woman with that intent, to be finding pleasure, and it's not his wife, or even after a man, I guess. That's weird for me to think about, but, that would be wrong. You're finding pleasure in those sinful behaviors that a child of God is not supposed to.
There you go.
According to Romans chapter 1. So is pornography wrong? Yes.
Yeah, and, most people are going to immediately go to Matthew 5:28. And that's where he says, but I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. As you mentioned, the looketh on a woman, that's natural. And I would go as far as to say there's nothing wrong with looking at a woman and admiring her beauty, admiring the way she dresses, presents herself, or anything like that. But there's a line that you cross, and that's what Jesus is talking about. And it's that word, looketh on a woman to lust. And that word there literally means to turn upon a thing, to have desire for, to covet, to seek things forbidden. It's a very specific word. And so you've taken the desire or the looking, an innocent look, and crossed a line, which now becomes sin. And Jesus says it's the same as committing adultery with her in your heart.
Yeah. And that's not, we want to be careful there, because some people try and take that and say, well, adultery. So my husband looks at pornography, or my wife looked at pornography. Now I have the right to divorce her and remarry. No, because in that passage, he's really dealing with something separate there.
That's right.
But, I think about James chapter 4:7, about submitting yourselves to God, resist the devil and he will flee from you. When somebody chooses to pursue pleasure and unrighteous behavior, one, you're not submitting to God. Two, you're not resisting the devil.
That's right.
You're embracing the devil.
Exactly.
Ray?
I was just thinking, it sounds like it's the lust and intent of the heart that it's talking about in that verse. When you go looking at pornography, you have an intent to lust after that woman. You're doing it on purpose. It's not something where a woman walks by and you say, wow, that's a pretty woman. It's an intent that you're going looking for this thing to do.
Oh, exactly. And you have to be careful, because sometimes when we talk about intent, people want to get into like situationalism, but intent is a part of it. You have to think about in Christianity, because the list here included murder. All killing is not murder. Murder is taking of the innocent life. Romans 13 would not be classified in the powers that be, bearing the sword. That's not murder. That's them executing justice. So sometimes defining our terms. But God created one man, one woman. He created them for life according to Genesis chapter 1 and 2. That's his intention. The only exception we're ever given is death, or because of adultery taking place. And the pornea.
There's a whole lot more there, but I think you answered that quite well.
Right.
Well, I hope I did. But that's one of the things that's great as we teach. Sometimes there's more questions that come up. Write those in, submit them through a form, email us. This question came in on email. I thank the submitter of that for being willing to submit his question. I think it was a great question.
Yes. And
Thank you.
More than happy to expand upon things. Sometimes, we just need to expand upon it a little bit more so that there's a better understanding.
So if there's more questions about that, let us know.